What a ghastly complexion I have taken on. I am not accustomed to this life, nor did I ask for it to be given. Even at that, to say my complexion is ghastly is merely an assumption based on the pale white hue my flesh has turned. I looked into a mirror for over an hour on that first night. It is the strangest sensation to stare into something that you know should bear an exact likeness staring back, only to be looking at nothing. Eventually that novelty wore off to the point of annoyance. My name is Christoph Valerius, and I am the living dead. I am a vampire. There is a certain oddity to this existence that I often struggle with. Something I cannot quite put a finger upon, like a stray itch that moves each time it is scratched. I seek understanding, yet find nothing but confusion and a deep internal pain. I exist beyond the realm of death, yet I struggle within against the knowledge of how this all should not be. There should be no evil to exist, such as I do. What manner of God would allow the breaking of the cycle of death? What devil would bestow such a heinous and atrocious gift? I have searched my soul for answers. A fruitless undertaking, as I now only have more questions. Questions I possess no method of answering. The one that made me did not linger to teach me the ways of this life. The final image of him standing above me, laughing in the throes of his ecstasy as my blood dripped from his lips will haunt me to the ends of time. How could he take everything from me without reason? No explanation. Nothing. I was sampled and cast aside to this nightmare. With certainty, I can state that the act of dying is not a noble thing. There is no magic to it. There is only a cold sleep that forces its way upon you like a ravenous lover. The edges of reality fade, and no matter how you fight, in the end, the blackness claims victory. And then, nothing. I would have welcomed it to remain as such, but alas, I would not have such fortune. The birth into undeath was a foul thing indeed. One might imagine their eyes opening wide and lungs feverishly working to take in oxygen as they jolted back upright into the world of the living. One could not be further from the truth, if that is what one believes. It is a cold and putrid thing. There is no miraculous feeling of life returning. There is no light to follow back to the world. There is only the sickly feeling of internal organs churning back into function. The romance of the vampire rebirth from literature is nothing more than the fanciful spinnings of master wordsmiths. There is nothing glorious or romantic in this existence. There is only the heart-wrenching pain and intense anger. And then there is the thirst. I recall quite vividly the first time the thirst made its assault upon me. Like a fire, it slowly burned inside. As time wore on, the flames were stoked within me until I felt as though the inferno coursed through my body, burning and yearning to escape. I did not have illusions as to what this torturous pain was, as instinct assumed control. I burst from the small farmhouse at the edge of the forest. I knew nothing of where to go, as it was my maker that brought me to this place and left me to die, and then to live again. I began running and quickly learned that I can move as quickly as the wind. The trees around me blurred as I wove between them. I became hypersensitive to everything around me. The sound of insects buzzing, humming, and chirping was overwhelming. The strong scent of pine and wet leaves on the forest floor consumed me. I was not able to admire my newfound abilities, as the all-consuming fire burned within. It was not long before I reached the edge of the forest. The smell of the ocean filled my nostrils, and the air thickened with a dense fog. I could hear the distant chiming of a buoy in the bay, and I knew that civilization was near. Abatement to the dire thirst was near. Every inch of my being wanted to rush out and feed upon the first soul I came across, but logic advised against it. I had to be very cautious. My kind were not looked kindly upon. I could hear the sounds of merriment in the distance. Laughter and clinking glasses echoed in my head, furthering the stoking of the fitful flames of the thirst. I could feel the elongated points of my canine teeth pressing firmly into my lip as my jaw clenched. I forced the noise to fade and started my focus anew. With eyes closed tightly, I listened to everything in every direction. It began as a scraping sound at first, faint but nearby. Then a sniffle. A dog worker, perhaps. I inhaled deeply in the direction of the sound. He was alone. With lightning speed, I surged from behind the trees into the mist. I made no sound upon the cobblestone beneath my feet as I darted from shadow to shadow, cautious to avoid the street lamps. My throat tightened in anticipation, and the fire turned ice cold within me. I was close. The pier was void of any activity and heavily cloaked in fog. I could see a merchant ship at the end of the pier bobbing slightly in the dark waters. The light of a lantern moved to and fro in the mist. The distance to the end of the pier troubled me slightly. I was not concerned about the man, but more so how he may react to my approach. I did not want to become cornered at the end of the pier with an angry mob approaching. My newly tuned senses also made it quite clear that water was a thing to be avoided, else face a horrific end. At the time it did not seem such a bad idea, but the instinct to survive harshly swept the thought away. Frustrated, I began calculating how to make my approach. I deemed it vital to use the fog as cover and approach as silently as possible. It was not the perfect solution, but would have to suffice. The thirst had me in its grasp and was making the decisions for me. A strange thought entered my mind as I looked once again to the end of the pier. The thought, I am quite certain, was not of my creation. It spoke to me in a hushed tone, soothingly. It told me to become the mist. I bit back a chortle at the absurdity of the idea. There was something, though, something convincing. And then, with a simple belief, the strangest thing occurred. I could sense my physical presence diminishing, almost spiraling away. There was no feeling to the act, just a comprehension deep within my consciousness. My sight narrowed and faded until there was nothing but the darkness. Though I could not see, my surroundings were very clear to me. It were as though I joined the very life force of the earth. Infinitely conscious to everything around me, I moved upon the mist and made my approach. The man was seated upon a wooden crate, wiping sweat from his brow with a tattered and dirty sleeve. His scent was a delicious thing that assaulted me. The thirst was to have its satisfaction. It demanded its satisfaction. A tingling returned as the walls of darkness faded, and as it began, the transition to my physical form was complete. There was no thought, or even a moment to consider the act. My hands thrust forward, one grabbing hair and jerking the head to one side, the other pinning the man's arms to his side. The next moment is lost to memory. I recall only the feeling within. Sensuous. Powerful. Orgasmic. Reality came back to me as I looked down upon the body of the man, face down on the stone. Spattered blood stained the area around him. I could feel my chest heaving rapidly as my body surged in delight. My euphoric moment would not last. The laughter returned, the haunting melody that ushered me into this existence. I looked up into the eyes of my maker, their red glow intensely looking back at me, through me. The grin on his slightly upturned lips triggered a feeling of black sickness. He raised his hand slowly, never taking his gaze from my eye, and began applauding. I knew you had it in you, he said. Now come. We've a world to rule and an eternity to rule it.